Hey brats, welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to talk about the new upcoming HP Reverb G2. Now, there's been several of you out there that have asked questions. Is this really the index killer? Is this really going to be the new standard for VR headsets like HP is claiming? So we're going to take some time and talk about it today. Currently, the only YouTuber that I've seen have one of these is Sebastian over at MRTV. We're going to watch his footage of the entire thing, look at the specs, and say, is this really the new top tier VR headset? Before we get fully into the video, I want to say a couple things. One, there is going to be a lot of meat to this discussion, so I will be putting in chapters. So if there's a certain part that you're interested in, you can skip to that chapter down below, whatever you want to see. A couple of disclaimers here. One, what we are going to be discussing is, of course, my opinion on the headset from what I've seen from reading about it, from the videos about it, and from my experience in the VR industry. 5 years now as a VR owner and enthusiast, 1 year as a content creator, and someone who's very heavily followed the VR industry from the beginning. I do also want to address some of the comments I've seen about things like MRTV is probably getting paid by HP for this, or MRTV is doing this to try to sell headsets. So I don't personally have any relationship with Sebastian or MRTV. I've never personally worked with or even talked to him directly. From the reviews I've watched on his channel, it does seem like he tries to give you an honest but still very positive review of most products. If you go to his website here, MRTV.co. He has an ethics code actually up here that says MRTV does not do any kind of sponsored reviews, period. All MRTV reviews are unbiased, fair, and are produced with the only purpose to educate consumers about the pros and cons of the reviewed product. MRTV does not accept any kind of payment or any other benefit from a third party that expects a favorable review in return. And you can go check this out for yourself. I'll leave a link in the description to his whole website in case you want to go see what he's about. It does go on to say basically that there is affiliate links, which means he can make some money off of certain products if you do order them through those links. Those links are just there to help support the channel. That is something to keep in mind. I don't think that there's been any swaying on his part of these reviews. I will say that from watching his reviews personally, I think that he's very diplomatic in his reviews.
Is it any comfortable? And I can tell you, yes, it is not bad. It's really not so bad. Let me give you here a look at the headset. So the faceplate here, it is some kind of velvety material. There
is ways that he talks that is careful. He is working with these companies. He wants to maintain a good relationship with them. But I in no way think that he's being paid off for this. I'll even point out there was a comment on his actual HP video that said, your last two videos got me to pre-order already. You're just piling it on now. I hope HP cuts you a really big fat check. And then he said, no, they don't. It is okay. I will keep being independent. And whenever I get paychecks, I will always do that transparently. He's reaffirming to his audience, this isn't some effort by HP to pay him a bunch. They mention on their website that there is partner channels, which I imagine is what he's considered here. A partner channel means that he reviews it honestly. He puts a link in the description if you decide after his review you want to buy it, and then he does get paid off that. So I think that Sebastian is doing honest and forthright reviews. I think that he is diplomatic in the way that he responds about when he does or doesn't like something. So two things that I would add to think about with any sort of reviewer that you watch. There is going to be a degree of, one, they're experienced in the industry. For me personally, if I put on a VR headset and I say, oh wow, this picture looks really good, that is subjective to all the other VR headsets that I've ever tried. If someone who comes from playing a 4K monitor with 144 hertz refresh rate, and they put on even the best VR headset there is and say, oh, this doesn't look as good as games I'm used to. Well, of course, there's no consumer computer or consumer headset that can take what is this little tiny monitor in front of you and basically stack these monitors all around you inside of VR to be a whole 360 degrees of your entire view. That's just not possible. So if I say, oh, it's a really great picture, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone would put the headset on and feel the same way. MRTV is the same. He's been in the VR industry. He's tried probably, I would guess, most all of the headsets that are available to consumers. So if he says it looks really good from someone who does VR, it looks really good. The other thing to think about from any sort of content creator, especially, we love the medium. That's why we get into this. There's going to be a degree of always being somewhat positive about things. Unless something's just an absolute piece of garbage, most people are at least going to say, well, here's the pros and here's the cons. You still want to be fair and objective, and you still want to try to show that VR as a whole isn't just a pile of crap, because it's not. If you were to just go after every VR headset in every video you made in a review and say, well, this is what the Valve Index does wrong, and this is what this does wrong, and playing this game is just a nightmare, that it would be counterintuitive to your efforts of being a content creator and helping further a platform that you actually believe in and are passionate about. No matter what kind of review you're watching, those are always something you should keep in mind as an audience to it, because it's important. No one is ever truly objective in what they review. They're doing their best to try and set aside their own personal bias, but there's always going to be a degree of that. You want to go to someone who knows what they're talking about and then get the best perspective they can give you. But for the next portion of this video, we're going to watch pretty much entirely his review and testing of the tracking. This is one of the more recent testing and tracking. This wasn't the one done in Rec Room. This is with several different games. After the portion where we talk about the video, that'll be where I go into what excitement I have for the headset and what concerns I have left. So in his previous video, first reviewing it, the one that I mentioned where he did Rec Room, that was the one where he mentioned this was the test built headset and that he was still using the old controllers. The new controllers are believed to be a better design, a better shape, more ergonomic. There hasn't been any news that I can find that says that there is anything specific about the internals being any better. It's still using the same light tracking, it's still using 2 AA batteries, it's still the same basic light tracking ring design and shape. It's really just seems to be the ergonomics of the controllers that have changed. But if there was something to do with the internals, there could be something else different about it, so keep that in mind. It's hard to confirm from how far away he is here that these still are the same previous controllers from Windows Mixed Reality, but they have said that these new controllers are also going to be backwards compatible.
All right, Beat Saber. So now trying it here with expert mode, and I can tell you it works really great. You won't have any problems. Actually, I would go so far to say you will not have a disadvantage as compared to players of the Rift S, the Quest, or even Lighthouse tracked headsets, because tracking just works perfectly fine. So this is no problem for the HP Reverb G2.
So there's a couple of things there that I want to break down that are mentioned. One, that it's perfectly fine, which makes me think that he's playing on expert. So with most headsets and Beat Saber, I feel like you don't really start to find anything wrong with your tracking until you get to Expert Plus. That's when it becomes really demanding. You have to move really quickly. He said that he doesn't think that this will be any worse than Lighthouse tracking, which with my personal experience with inside out tracking, I do find that to be a tough claim. I think just like he said here, he's only playing on expert due to skill level. So let's kind of examine this real quick. Now, I've spent a lot of time playing Beat Saber on first PSVR, then on a Rift CV1, and then I moved to the Rift S that I now use to make mixed reality videos on the channel. I'm a little disappointed. I know it's a lot of work, and I don't know if Sebastian makes mixed reality videos. Being called Mixed Reality TV, I would think that would kind of be like his jam. So I was really hoping when he did the Beat Saber testing, he would do it in mixed reality, because a lot of the tracking issues I find on the Rift S, I actually barely notice until I'm editing a video. If you want to play Expert Plus and you want to get the SS, the highest rank there is, you have to be hitting 90% of the total score. The way Beat Saber is scored in a really just simple way to put is really just how wide of an arc you're swinging with. There's a whole breakdown to it, but that's the simplest form of it. It's how wide you're swinging. So you're swinging wide to try and get the SS. What happens when you swing wide is it's real common to reach outside. Even on the Rift S with all of its cameras, or the Quest, it's common to reach outside of the area for a moment and swing back. Now, the way the headset compensates for that, if losing it for a split second, and then your hand is now coming back, what'll happen is the minute it sees where your hand is back in frame, it will pull that controller from wherever it was left behind and snap it right back. Now, you'll see an example of that right here. So I swing hard down to the right and it loses the controller for a second. And right there, it's uncertain where the controller's going, and it stayed and it snapped back into place in my hand. I didn't miss the note as a result, but this is something if I was playing in first person, you wouldn't be able to see where that happened. It's down, I swing, and it came up just in time, and instead of slicing directly through the middle of the block like it should have, it was still off and down to my side. So when it met my hand, it came up to the right, and then cut the corner of the block instead of cutting directly from the bottom like I had swung. And I only noticed this in editing the video. So here's another example of it. I swing, so when I swung out to hit the note, it stayed, but then it snapped back just in time and didn't break my combo there. Now, this is actually something that's extremely common. When it came to finding these clips, I literally just went to my folder of Beat Saber files, and from this top row, right here, I was able to pull every kind of example that I was looking for. It's very common, but for the most part, you won't notice it when you're playing Beat Saber because it'll snap back just in time as you're swinging. Now this one here was a really unique one. When the controller loses visual tracking of the lights, it just stays wherever you left it. But because of the sensors that are still inside, gyroscopes, accelerometers, magnetometers, whatever kind of sensor your controller uses, you can still turn the controller left or right and stuff, and it will still physically turn in place. It's basically cut down to 3 degrees of freedom now instead of 6. I'm gonna swing down with the red one. It's gonna stay where it's at. I'm gonna swing for the note, and it's actually, the controller's never going to catch up to my hand. It's going to still cut the note once the note is past me. See that right there? The controller was still behind me, but because of how long the saber was and my swing was, I still cut the note, and I still, again, in first person, would have never known that I had missed this note, but was lucky enough that it didn't mess up my score because I still cut it. I just cut it at the wrong time. I find this on my Rift S all the time. There is a risk to this. When the controller snaps back to your hand from wherever in space it was, if you were swinging up and the controller gets stuck up, and then you swing down and it catches up and comes back down, you're still in a downswing, and that's fine. The risk is if you're up like this and your controller sticks, and then you go to like side swipe, and then the controller, instead of realizing it did that side swipe, it just snaps back to your hand this way. It does a downstroke instead of a left stroke, and then you end up messing up the note. So right here, I swing for the green, it gets stuck, and I totally missed the left one, even though I made the swing. I would miss it in the song, and I think, oh, I missed that note. But then when I was editing, it was like, oh, I didn't miss the notes, and it got to the point where with editing videos, I just realized, okay, I may not get full combos on songs a lot of times. Sometimes it'll be my fault. A fair amount of time, it's going to be the tracking's fault. And that's inside-out tracking in general. This is on a Rift S. This is not specifically the Windows Swing Shy, but inside-out tracking in general still struggles with these things. Watch the left saber. A hard upswing. Just totally got stuck, and that one got stuck so bad that I actually missed several notes, even though I'd gotten it back in the camera range. So that really doesn't change anything about the Reverb or the Rift. Basically, it just says if you want to be a Beat Saber pro, you want to make great mixed reality videos of Beat Saber, you need lighthouse tracking. That's not to say you can't do that with the Reverb G2. You can pay $600 for the headset. MRTV just dropped another video of how to get the index controllers working with it. You'll definitely need to want to be a bit of a tinkerer if you're going to be someone who's going to try that, because it does look like there's apps and dongles and things you have to do to make it work, but it does work. So if you're not afraid to take that on, the other con to that though would be you're gonna be paying $600 for the headset and another $600 for the controllers, the lighthouses, and then whatever dongles and such you need too.
Now let's go to the next game, and that's In Death. So a wonderful bow and arrow game, and well, lots of people are wondering, can you play bow and arrow games with the Windows Mixed Reality headsets? Yes, you can, and even better now with the HP Reverb G2, because it has 2 more cameras. So you will have more tracking volume on the right and left side, and that is of course really important when playing bow and arrow games. So as you can tell here, I have absolutely no problems whatsoever playing In Death. Just works as good as with my other headsets, and good news for all of the people who want to play In Death and bow and arrow games. No problem here with the HP Reverb G2.
So I would definitely agree watching here. You can totally play bow and arrow games. I mean, you can play them on. He's pulling the arrows pretty fast and just letting them go. Now, when I play bow and arrow games, I want to pretend I'm all cool. I want to like pull it back and aim off the arrow and then try to let go with the perfect aim. It doesn't look like with this headset you would be able to actually do a long pull and hit a distant target easily. Watch the tip of the arrow and the feathers on the back. So there is still a significant amount of controller wobble happening, and most likely that's because it's so close to the headset. When you pull your arrow back, you've got it right here, and those lights, they may be in view of the cameras, but they're extremely close to the camera. It may be getting a fuzzy image of that. It may not quite be getting enough of the lights to really well track it. And so it's making enough of a wobble with that arrow. You could still easily play the games, but you're gonna notice that it's gonna be hard to really aim it and fully let go. So he's pulling them back and quickly letting go, but there's a constant wobble with all of the arrows when he has them on the bow. And every controller, even Lighthouse, is going to have at least a very slight amount of wobble. It should barely be noticeable on good tracking. We'll go play some In Death real quick and see if on the Rift S if you can actually get it to mess up. So we are in Death, the same game that he used. Right now we are here just in the intro, and so I will show you the wobble. So with a bow and arrow game, you want an arrow that's going to stay really steady, because you want to be able to pull back and aim. And see, once I get out here, then I start to get a little bit of wobble, but it's not bad because on the Rift, they've done a lot to correct it. So I expect the Reverb G2 will probably do the same thing. It'll come out, people will be like, oh, the tracking, it's good, but it's not great. Boom, they'll put in some software updates. I wished he would have taken the arrow back like this and pulled and let us see how much wobble there is. Because on this, you can see the feathers wobbling a little bit, not terribly, but you can see the arrow tip itself isn't really wobbling. Where in his video, it seemed like the arrow tip itself was wobbling around probably about that much, which would mean that the back end was moving around about the same.
So, as you can tell here, I hit them where it hurts in depth. Just works as good as with my other headsets. Alright, and now we are here in Tilt Brush. I had read some comments which said like, alright, Sebastian only did these kind of fast movements and it's only good with fast movements, but it's not good with slow movements or if you need precision.
And same thing here, if you're watching the tip, there is some wobble, it is noticeable. It's not enough that it's gonna be game breaking for you, but if you're someone who wants an absolutely still experience in penciling, inside out tracking in general still may not be quite where you want it. What I personally wanna see is, I wish he would put the controller on a table or put it on something stationary and watch it so that you could see how much wobble it's getting just when it's stationary. Because it's natural, like I said, for all of them to have a little bit, but it should be very minute, especially with you're paying this much for it. It should be a very small amount of wobble.
I'm doing these kind of lines here and you absolutely need precision to do that. And simply compare that with my movements that I'm doing. These are exactly the movements. So you can use Tilt Brush and you can use any kind of productive app that will require you to have these kind of really precise movements.
There is a degree of wobbliness. One question that I have though, is that this headset or is that because of his environment? So one thing, if you don't know this, over on Windows Central, this is an old article, but this just kind of talks about Windows mixed reality in general. It says how to fix motion controller tracking loss in Windows mixed reality. Since it is based on light tracking, it's not infrared lighting like the Rift CV1. It's using regular actual light, similar to the PSVR. Instead of the PSVR where you're standing like 7 or 8 feet away from the camera, it's right in front of the camera, so it's much more reliable. It says here, sometimes the controllers do take a ride of their own. Let's have a look at why this happens. One of the major causes of poor Windows mixed reality controller tracking has to do with the lighting in your VR space. Ensure that your controllers aren't exposed to direct sunlight. If you're near any windows, direct sunlight streaming in will interfere with the lights of your controllers and the sensors in your headset. If possible, cover windows that are letting direct sunlight fall on your play area. Likewise, keep an eye out for other sources of light that could confuse the sensor. Now, he does have his curtains drawn in that room, but there still is a lot of light coming from one direction. If you're going to be using any type of VR headset that uses actual light tracking and not infrared, not lighthouse tracking, even if you're using a headset that has inside out tracking at all, like the Rift S, lighting has to be at least a slight concern. If your lights are too dim with a Rift S, it won't lose controller tracking, it'll lose the whole room because it's basing it off points that it sees in the room that have to be lit up. The Windows mixed reality, just like the PSVR, it's using actual light to track its controllers. So you need to consider the environment. If you have uneven lighting, so if you have one window letting sunlight in and you don't have other lights on, you may need to turn other lights on to help balance that out. If you have a skylight above you that you can't cover and you have direct sunlight coming in, that'll probably be a pretty rare moment of the day, but it could actually make it completely lose your controllers if sunlight's directly coming in. These are other factors to consider. It's not going to be headset breaking, but it is going to be a consideration. So if you want plug and play VR that's just ready to go all the time, it still may be something to think about when it comes to your decision of whether or not you want to get this headset. And if you're already playing in the dark and you're experiencing tracking issues even with the controllers directly in front of your headset, you might have to start troubleshooting your Bluetooth setup. Now that's something I want to call out here, not only about the Reverb G2, but the original Reverb, something people didn't all realize that was really great about the headset. It has Bluetooth built into the headset. So if your PC doesn't have Bluetooth, you don't have to go get one of those USB dongles. You don't have to worry about the fact that the dongle, the back of the PC, covered by the metal casing across the room, because I know when the first Windows mixed reality headsets came out that I had, you had to like put your Bluetooth dongle on the front of your PC, keep your PC near the play area, otherwise you'd start losing your controllers. The G2 has the Bluetooth built in, so not only is it close at all times, it also is paired from the factory. So you don't need to pair it to Bluetooth the first time you set it up. You just have to pair it in Windows. You don't have to necessarily go into your Bluetooth settings and find the controllers and put them in pairing mode. It's going to work for you, so that's much better. That's a big improvement. Blade and Sorcery. This would be a game I would just say I think this would be perfect. I can't imagine there'd be any problems with the motions you have to do. Maybe if he goes for a bow and arrow, having to reach over your shoulder. I know people are worried about reaching over with inside out tracking, but the thing a lot of people don't think about, there's a camera on the side, and typically in games, when you reach over your shoulder to grab something, you reach by your ear. You don't actually like reach back here and try to grab the arrow. You reach right here and grab, and it comes right to your hand. The other one would be the thigh holsters. Since there's no cameras on the Reverb G2 facing straight down, people think, oh, well, is it going to be able to see when you grab at your side or your thigh to grab your weapon? Well, if you were looking up at an enemy and you tried to grab one, pull your knife out to throw it, it might totally not see that. But for the most part, when you're playing a game and you go to reach for something off your thigh, you do tend to look down just a little bit, which is enough to give the cameras a downward angle to see where you're reaching. I can't imagine a game like Blade and Sorcery would have any problems with the G2. Kind of the same thing with boxing, like people might be concerned because you're going to hold your fist up. Well, you can't hold your fist up here because you have a headset sticking out of your face, you have the tracking rings, you're going to be holding your arms out here, and I don't think that this would have any tracking issues either.
So I wanted to find out how well would a boxing game work, and especially how close can I hold the controller in order to block. And I can tell you it works fine, as you can tell here, but I must also tell you that in my opinion the tracking of the Oculus Rift S and of the Quest works even better in these kind of situations, because you can put the controllers closer to the headset.
Now, he said something that's very compelling to me. He said that this works fine, but that the Rift S does work better. For me personally, having owned a Rift S, I am no Oculus fanboy by any means. I think the Rift S is a cool piece of tech. It's got tons of flaws and problems. To think that you could pay $200 more and get tracking that was even not quite as good as the Rift S, I would list that pretty high on the list of my concerns personally, but that is because of the types of games I play. Even when we get to the first few weeks of reviews, when these things actually first fully launch, don't think that if there aren't concerns, there won't be anything they can do about it. Things can be patched through software a lot of times and make a big difference. So something to consider, take it how you will.
Hopefully this will get better, and this also got better with the Quest and the Rift S. But at this moment in time, I would say the Quest and the Rift S have a little advantage here, but it also works well with the Reverb G2. And now we're getting to the part that probably most of you have been waiting for. We're trying first-person shooters and especially aiming down the sights. So we're going to do that here now in Pavlov. We're at the shooting range here, and as you can tell, I'm aiming down the sights. And
playing Pavlov here, there's definitely a degree of wobble you can see. I'm hoping that he'll move in and use a scope though, because the scopes are really the issue. With iron sights, you hold them usually out in front of your face enough that you don't notice it. What I found with the Rift S and with anything else with inside out tracking is when you try and the scope is up here on the gun, so you want to naturally bring that up to your eye. Usually does not work phenomenally still with inside out tracking. You try and bring it up here and it starts to move around on you. And it's gotten to the point with me where when I play a lot more Contractors than I do Pavlov, but when I play any of them, I've learned to keep my hands out away from me and keep that scope. So if it was a real life scope, it would be like out here instead of actually closer to my eye like I would use it. I've just learned to do that with the inside out tracking. You kind of have to.
It works without any problem. Just check it out and just see how stable everything is. There's no shaking here with the controllers, and you can simply play your favorite first-person shooters without any problems. And this here is Pavlov.
There might not be enough there to break it by any means, like he said, but I think that wobble, if you're really into competitive first-person shooters, I think you're going to notice that and you're going to be a little annoyed about it, to be honest, because even with the Rift S, I am when I play.
So one thing I have to tell you, you have to make sure that you don't play this in direct sunlight. Even in a well-lit room, like the room that you see here, you can run into problems. So what you need curtains or any way to darken the room. But well, all of these inside-out tracking systems, they do have these problems. Also the Rift S and the Quest and the Cosmos, even more than the others.
So he mentions the Vive Cosmos as having the most problems. That's because same thing, they used light tracking with this weird like kind of tribal tattoo looking pattern. That one really struggled with tracking, really bad. And I think that the dot tracking here that they use on Windows Mixed Reality is probably still superior to that.
If you need the perfect tracking that will work in the bright sunlight or in the absolute darkness, then definitely you need the lighthouse tracking of, for example, the Cosmos Elite or the Pimax headsets or the Index. All right, now we are here in Contractors and also aiming down the sides here. And as you can tell, it works really well.
It works well enough. I would definitely agree with him there, seeing this in Contractors. On these faraway targets, you're noticing that wobble more, and that wobble will be annoying. I really wish he would use a scope, though, because I'll get in Contractors after this and kind of show you what I can from the Rift. And the Rift looks like, from this footage, I would say the Rift has less wobble, but it's still something even with the Rift S that I deal with and that I don't personally enjoy with scopes. I actually prefer to use like a dot sight because of it, just because I don't notice it as bad.
Yeah, again, I can simply recommend the HP Reverb G2 to you. I really hope that with this video, now you have a better impression, even showing you this now in games and not only in Rec Room.
Okay, so let's hop in some Contractors and take a look at that. All right, so we're here in Contractors to inspect the use of inside-out tracking on the Rift S. He uses a gun that has iron sights, so I'm going to switch through not only iron sights, but a scope, a dot sight, and kind of look at how it works on the Rift S in comparison to what we're seeing in the video there, and what's different. So now in Contractors, when I used to want to aim, I always wanted to bring it right up to my eye to be able to see it. Now, it has improved a lot on the Rift S. Like this is right here. There's still some drift, but you can see it's really not that bad. But I have learned in playing the game more that I need to keep it out away from my eye if I want the most accuracy. With a scope, you usually want to bring it like right up to your eye, and this game does a better job of keeping it a little further out on most of the guns to where you can bring this close without having to bring this underneath down to your chin here. But the problem is when you get up here, you can see the amount of drift I'm experiencing in here. And now it's really starting to drift around here. Even the problem is it's not even the dots drifting, it's my whole scope is not staying in front of my eye. It's moving side to side. And when he's holding it out here though, you're getting extremely accurate. And I've had to learn in playing Contractors to keep it out here to get these kinds of accurate shots. Not where I want to, not close to my eye like this, but out further. So that is one of the dangers of inside-out tracking, especially with a headset where the cameras are here and over here and there's nothing down low. You can get pretty close, but my rings are also way up here. On the Rift S is another reason why they're a little better, because at least even as close as you get, it's still showing it right there. But if you use iron sights and you hold them out away from your face, you should be getting quite accurate. So watching all of the footage there, I would say that that addressed most of my concerns about the G2. I won't be ordering it for myself. That's nothing to do with the quality of it. That's to do with the cost and the fact that I already have a couple other headsets. So as far as HP's claim about this being the most advanced headset, I would say that is actually accurate, but that's to the statement that it is the headset itself. We're talking 2160 by 2160 displays. We're talking basically 4K in VR. We're talking 114 degrees field of view, which is still an improvement over most headsets. It's not as big as the Index. 90 hertz refresh rate, again, not as fast as the Index. So it depends on, it's kind of, do you prefer refresh rate? Do you prefer the visual resolution? And from some of the through the lens videos,
so on the left of the picture now you can see the HP Reverb G2, and on the right you see the Valve Index. So I personally can forego those few degrees of FOV that I'm losing with the HP Reverb G2 because, well, I'm gaining so much by having this.
The through the lenses look absolutely gorgeous. This headset is going to blow you away as far as graphics look. They're also using MSFT spatial audio. So if you follow the channel, you know that I care a lot about the audio experience, and that's something that's always been extremely underwhelming on the Rift S. Not even just the built-in speakers, which are not good at all, but the actual built-in audio processing. If you switch to headphones, it's still, you can tell if something's kind of to the left or kind of to the right. But like one of the best examples of it was actually the PSVR. Sony patented a binaural audio system. And so what that does with audio, when we hear a sound in real life, we don't just hear, oh, it's on the right, I know it's over there. We hear, like, if you hear a sudden crash of something dropping, you hear that sound in one ear, and then microseconds go by and you hear it in the other ear, and then your brain can then determine, because of that time that transpired in between, I know that was about 30 feet that direction at exactly my 230 position. Sony patented audio to do the same thing in VR with that. It's to the point, if you play a game like the Brookhaven Experiment where it's really dark and enemies are coming at you from all different directions, I could actually play it. I could just stop and listen and figure out not only what direction, but exactly where the enemies were coming from because of how well it was designed. I'd be like, okay, I know that's an enemy at my 10 o'clock and it's approximately 40 feet out and it's approaching me. I can hear it getting closer. That is really good. Now, everything that we've read and has been released about this HP Reverb G2 is that the spatial audio and the surround is just as good as the Index. It's basically the speakers that the Index has, which all reviews about those have been amazing, that you can tell what direction, what distance things are coming from. The audio is amazing. The video is amazing. I do wish they'd considered switching over to a Halo headband. I don't know why they've stuck with the old design, because in general, the VR industry has spoken and said the Halo headbands are much more comfortable. They don't give you VR face after we have this big red line all around you. They don't put the weight on your face. Maybe that was a cost savings, or what I suspect the main reason is because this headset is going to be the best headset for sim players. If you are a sim racer, if you're a sim flyer, the fact that you can see your individual gauges and see what they're doing because of this high clarity. If you don't have a Halo headband, you can actually lean back against a chair and you don't have some crank on the back that's affecting your comfort level. So I suspect that was a big reason why they did that. If you're getting into this because you want to play VR chat and you want to be able to wave and point at people and thumbs up and stuff, there is no finger tracking built into this headset. The Valve Index obviously has every finger tracked, or like the Rift has basic gestures. You can point, you can thumbs up, you can close your fist, and it still tracks your fingers individually. These controllers don't have any of that. So that's another consideration to think about. Is that game breaking? I don't think so. And like most games, I'm sure what they'll do is they'll build in, like, if you're half depressing the triggers, it's going to do a different hand gesture than if you're fully depressing them. And so you'll still have some control over that, I'm sure. VR chat was the whole reason you're getting this. You might be one of the people who wants to the Index controllers instead with this. Again, you're going to be paying more than you would for an Index if you do that. So keep that in mind. We talked about the light tracking, but we did not talk about the batteries as a part of this. Now, my biggest issue with my Windows Mixed Reality headset that I had, the 3 of them that I owned, the batteries in the controllers. Not only did it burn through them quickly using light tracking, because you would use rechargeable batteries, there was some issue with the controllers that it would not know if they were full, if they were at 50%, if they were almost dead. And it immediately, after putting in a brand new freshly charged set, it would tell you controller battery is low, and to save that controller battery to the last second, a built-in system they had was it would disable your haptic feedback in your controllers. Now, don't let that freak you out and say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get this. There's tons of articles on Reddit on how to fix this. So like this one says here, how to fix the always low battery on mixed reality controllers. They said after hours of painstaking research, they found a fix, and it's to clean the contacts on the PCB where the batteries sit. Don't know why it works, but it does. At least it did for me. Now, I found actually several articles on Reddit where this became basically the known method. You just have to take apart the controller. All you have to do is you have to unscrew the inside, take that panel off, and they say leave the screws over to the side here. That's smart. You're gonna just pull your thumbstick straight out of the controller. It's a little bit of a hard pull to pull it out. You get in here, you tear down the controller, and you can see these steps. Tear it all the way down till you get to the PCB, basically the little mini motherboard inside of it. And from there, you need to clean the contacts on the inside. Now, these controllers are updated ergonomically. I want to believe that they will have fixed this issue. I am not a tinkerer. I don't like tearing apart hardware to do things to it, so I never did this. So I basically, my entire time I used my headset, I just never had haptic feedback in my controllers. Every once in a while I'd spring and put in some AA's that I got from some remote from somewhere, and I'd have haptic feedback for about 6 hours, and it was so fun, and then those batteries would die, and I would go back to using my rechargeables because I didn't want to constantly be buying brand new AA's. Now, this here is an entirely separate one from Desk Parser 3 months ago. He said as the community settled on an ideal battery for Windows Mixed Reality controllers. And he goes on to say, basically, he's tried some, looking for ones that are good and reliable for rechargeables. Howitzer here talks about how he got some of these. He's going to test them in Beat Saber, and then he popped them in, was immediately prompted with the low battery notification to start charging them to full. He said the contacts needed cleaning with rubbing alcohol, and then the controllers were good from that point on. So same thing. Maybe these new ones will have fixed it. If they haven't, though, hopefully as long as you're willing to tear things down and clean the inside every once in a while, then this shouldn't be something that would stop you. Now, my last concern, and what was my breaking point for me, Steam just did not work well enough with it for me. It always seemed like I would try to run a game and one game would work and one game wouldn't, and I just never knew what it was. Like, there was never a determining factor when you go out to buy a game whether it was going to work or not. I've done collaborations with another VR YouTuber out there. He does all of his videos on a Samsung Odyssey Plus. He's to the point where he knows how to do the Steam returns, because basically anytime he buys a game on Steam, he'll go test it out, and if it's giving him problems, it's not going to work, he'll just return it and get the refund. So Steam's really good about that. Windows Mixed Reality, it's been out for almost 3 years now, and he's still having these problems, but they finally partnered with Valve. I want to believe that they're going to fix it. It is another thing to keep in mind, because that has nothing to do with the controllers. That if there's a game-breaking glitch inside of the software that isn't fixed, that could really suck. This is from 16 days ago. It says, I think that my biggest fear that so many games have Windows mixed reality issues and need other Windows mixed reality patches. Some games get them a day or two later, but some take much longer. Is this a valid concern? Also, how is Revive with Windows mixed reality on par with the Vive Index? So it says, which games are you having problems for? I've had it forever, and the biggest problems I had were Dirt Rally. Other than that, I've not had any other problems. I have both Revive and Steam VR for Windows, so I can't tell you which is contributing to what. So basically, if you get Revive and Steam VR and Windows mixed reality, if you're willing to do all these apps across the board, you might never have a problem with any game. You might run into some problems with some games. It's a bit of a crapshoot, sadly, and you just never know. The unfortunate thing would be if there was one game in VR you really wanted to play and that was the one that didn't work, that would be heartbreaking. So like further down the comment, the guy says, for example, Mage's Tale and Paranormal Activity don't have Windows mixed reality support, and there are lots of other games still missing it. If you're willing to tinker with the software, you might be able to get these games working for yourself. So for me, before I got into the channel, before I started creating content, I used to work a lot in management. And so that's why I got a PSVR in the first place, because I wanted to know when I put a game in, it would just work. I wouldn't have to mess with drivers or settings or anything. That's why for years I've been a console gamer. I love my PC now, but I'm not into tinkering with software and hardware every time I go to use something. So that might be a consideration. If you want something to always work with Steam games and always work with Valve, it might be best to get their headsets. But other people here have tons of solutions. And if you get this and you're having a problem, I highly recommend Reddit as a place to go to reach out to other people who have dealt with it. People are super helpful. You're going to find your occasional troll. That's true with anywhere on the internet, but people are super helpful, and they are going to teach you or help get you through the problems that you might run into. So this is an article from Slash Gear here. It says, Reverb G2 looks to be the top tier VR headset of tomorrow. I agree. The headset itself does look like it is going to be phenomenal. I would say if you were a sim racer or a flight sim person predominantly, I would definitely get this over an Index. It's going to look better. You're going to be able to see everything. It's going to be comfortable if you want to lean your head back against your chair. It's top there. Also, just in general for other VR headset owners, if you've never owned a PC VR headset before, if this is going to be your first one, if you're coming from PSVR, if you're coming from any sort of mobile VR, like if you only had an Oculus Go or a Google Cardboard or a Samsung Gear VR, this is gonna absolutely blow you away. My only worry for you if you get this headset is if you're coming from an Oculus Rift CV1 or from a Vive or from anything else that uses Lighthouse tracking, you will probably notice the flaws in tracking enough that it is going to hurt the experience. If you have a lot of money and you can afford getting this and getting the Knuckles controllers and putting it all together, this would probably be the ultimate setup running that way. This would be like you'd have the perfect hand tracking. The only question still that's on the table that we won't know is there going to be any compatibility issues with Steam VR and Windows Mixed Reality as we've seen for the last couple of years. Hopefully they're partnering with them. It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And if HP does that, that's going to be a major dropping of the ball on my account, because they cannot let that get in the way of this headset with how great it looks and how great the specs are. So in conclusion, this headset looks awesome. Is the controller tracking a huge upgrade from the old one? And is it gonna outdo any of the other PC solutions at the moment? I don't think so. It doesn't look like it, but again, the only reviews we have are still early. Maybe we'll get more reviews that show, hey, they've updated the boards inside of the controllers. They've updated something about the tracking. Maybe the cameras have a faster shutter rate, and so they keep them in line more. I don't know any of that yet until we see more reviews. But for now, it looks like the headset itself is going to be incredible. The tracking may not be, but again, if you're coming at this from something new, that'll be great. The first few weeks after it actually finally launches, we'll get a lot more reviews. We'll get to learn a lot more. Keep in mind, there still may be patches in there, maybe things they have to figure out during those weeks, and we'll just have to see that as it happens. So I'm personally going to be following this really closely. I'm really interested to see if this is finally going to be the headset that makes me think, okay, I may want to get a Windows Mixed Reality headset again. Because they were the first ones I owned when I got a PC, because the price of entry had dropped so much. When the HP first headset dropped, I think it was $350, and it was like, how is that possible? I'm talking not the Reverb, I'm talking the original one. And within months, I got one for $150 because they inserted themselves into the wrong price point in the market. They realized it quickly and they dropped the price substantially. Now, I've gone away from them because of the problems they had back then, but if this one comes out and it works great and people say the tracking is at least as good as the Rift S, I would say, wow, this might actually tempt me to move back into that realm, because it wasn't a bad enough experience to put me off, but it definitely had enough little issues that I thought, okay, I want a headset that I can put on that's going to just work with Steam, that's going to work with Oculus, and I'm not going to have to do a lot of tinkering. And the Rift S has done that, but it has its trade-offs just like any headset. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you going to buy one? Have you already pre-ordered one? Does this make you think any differently about what you were thinking before? Has this helped you decide, okay, this could be for me, or oh, maybe I want to go a different direction? I'd love to know in the comments how you feel about it. Can't wait to see it come out. I don't think there's any chance I'll get to review one anytime soon, so I'm gonna have to kind of look to others, but I'm hoping maybe someone I know will get one and I can go try it out over there and see what I think. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you stuck through this whole video, I know there was a lot to it, but we had a lot to cover about this, so I want to say an extra special thank you if you're still here. I will see you in another reality. I want to say the biggest ever thank you to our now 4 patrons: K27, Rocket Sauce 28, Fred Nepetebo, Ege Karnatash. Thank you so much, all of you.